In a city sitting on the western tip of Texas along the U.S.-Mexico border, home values have historically remained lower than the national average, with median home prices often ranging between the low to mid-200,000s compared to significantly higher averages in many large U.S. metropolitan areas. Yet even here, rising property taxes, increasing rents, and limited affordable housing development have created mounting pressure on low-income residents. And this is where our story begins, with the camera slowly moving across the Franklin Mountains at sunrise before descending into downtown streets, where skyscrapers cast long shadows over sidewalks that become temporary bedrooms at night, introducing us to men and women who once had stable jobs at warehouses, military facilities connected to Fort Bliss, restaurants, construction sites, or small family businesses, but who now carry their lives in backpacks and shopping carts. Explaining in quiet interviews how a single medical emergency, a sudden layoff, a divorce, or untreated trauma pushed them from paycheck to paycheck survival into eviction notices, and finally into shelters or encampments near highways and underpasses, showing how rising home values benefit property owners building equity while renters face annual increases that outpace wage growth. Following a mother of two who works full-time yet cannot secure an apartment because application fees, deposits, and credit checks create barriers she cannot overcome, documenting the waiting lists for subsidized housing that stretch for months or years, highlighting nonprofit outreach teams distributing water during scorching desert summers when temperatures exceed 100 degrees and dehydration becomes life-threatening, capturing the complexity of border dynamics where migration, federal policies, and local economics intersect, revealing how some newly arrived migrants also experience temporary homelessness while seeking work authorization and stable footing, presenting city council meetings where residents debate zoning laws, short-term rentals, and development incentives, contrasting new suburban housing developments with tents pitched only miles away, exploring the psychological toll of homelessness through conversations about depression, PTSD, and substance use disorders that often both contribute to and result from life on the streets, illustrating how emergency shelters provide critical safety, yet struggle with overcrowding and limited funding. Profiling a veteran who speaks about returning from service with invisible wounds and finding it harder to navigate civilian employment than expected. Analyzing how affordable housing shortages are not unique to El Paso, but reflect national trends in which housing supply fails to keep pace with population growth and investment properties, reshape neighborhoods, interweaving data graphics that compare El Paso's median home value to cities like Los Angeles and New York to emphasize relative affordability, while still acknowledging that affordability is relative to income. Showing how minimum wage workers must work far more than 40 hours per week to afford fair market rent without exceeding recommended income-to-rent ratios. Presenting stories of resilience where individuals transition from encampments into transitional housing programs, secure job training, and slowly rebuild credit. Documenting community volunteers who prepare hot meals in church parking lots and organize donation drives. Examining law enforcement perspectives on public safety and the challenges of balancing compassion with enforcement of city ordinances. Revealing how children experiencing homelessness struggle academically due to frequent school changes and lack of stable study environments. Interviewing educators who describe the hidden homelessness of families doubling up with relatives to avoid sleeping outside. Discussing how property investors view El Paso as an emerging market due to its steady growth and military presence, thereby increasing competition for starter homes that first-time buyers once could afford. Following urban planners advocating for mixed-income developments and inclusionary zoning. Spotlighting grassroots advocates demanding expanded mental health services and rental assistance programs. Portraying a day in the life of a case manager juggling dozens of clients while navigating complex eligibility requirements for federal housing vouchers. Illustrating the seasonal rhythm of homelessness as winter cold snaps drive more people into shelters and summer heat pushes outreach teams to distribute sunscreen and bottled water, reflecting on the dignity and individuality of each person encountered. Challenging stereotypes that portray homelessness as laziness rather than a multifaceted economic and social issue. Incorporating expert commentary from economists explaining how even modest home value increases can cascade into higher rents and property taxes. Depicting the emotional strain of parents trying to shield children from stigma. Documenting small victories such as obtaining an ID card or opening a bank account. Emphasizing collaboration between city officials, nonprofits, faith communities, and private developers, questioning whether long-term solutions lie in expanding affordable housing stock, increasing wages, reforming healthcare access, or all of the above. Concluding with a panoramic sunset shot over the Rio Grande as voices of those interviewed echo about hope, stability, and the simple desire for a safe place to call home. Reminding viewers that behind statistics about median home values and housing markets are human beings whose stories reveal both the fragility and resilience woven into the fabric of this border city. As the sun disappears behind the Franklin Mountains and the lights begin to flicker across the desert floor, the story continues not with statistics, but with the quiet sound of wind brushing against canvas tents near the edge of downtown, where night brings both relief from the heat and new uncertainty. And we follow the same mother introduced earlier as she tucks her children into donated blankets inside a crowded shelter, whispering reassurances that tomorrow will be better while silently calculating how many hours she must work to afford a deposit that keeps rising faster than her paycheck. And the camera shifts to a community meeting where housing advocates outline proposals for expanding low-income tax credit developments, arguing that even in a comparatively affordable market like El Paso, stagnant wages and inflation have eroded buying power, causing families who once qualified for starter homes to remain renters indefinitely. And we hear from a local real estate analyst explaining that while median home prices remain below many national metro averages, investor purchases and limited inventory have tightened supply, pushing entry-level homes out of reach for many first-time buyers. And the narrative weaves between perspectives as a landlord describes increased maintenance costs and property taxes, insisting rent hikes are necessary to stay afloat, while tenants describe choosing between groceries, gas, and rent, revealing the fragile balancing act that defines life on the economic edge. And we spend time with a veteran attending a job training workshop funded by a nonprofit partnership, learning new technical skills in hopes of securing stable employment that can finally qualify him for an apartment lease, while outreach volunteers conduct nighttime wellness checks in encampments, offering hygiene kits and information about transitional housing. And the camera lingers on the faces of teenagers experiencing homelessness who speak candidly about disrupted dreams, part-time jobs that barely cover transportation, and the embarrassment of hiding their situation from classmates. And as weeks pass in the film's timeline, we document incremental progress. One individual secures a housing voucher, but struggles to find a landlord willing to accept it. Another gains part-time employment, yet cannot save enough for upfront moving costs. And city officials debate allocating additional funds for rental assistance versus enforcement of anti-camping ordinances, capturing tense public comments from residents who worry about neighborhood safety, alongside advocates who call for compassion and systemic reform. And the story broadens to examine healthcare access as a pivotal factor, showing how untreated mental illness and chronic medical conditions can spiral into job loss and eviction, while mobile clinics attempt to bridge gaps by providing basic care directly in underserved areas. And the narrative emphasizes data without losing humanity, illustrating how even a small increase in rent can displace households living paycheck to paycheck, especially in a city where many residents work in service industries, logistics, or military-adjacent roles with limited wage growth. and we observe a transitional housing complex where former shelter residents begin rebuilding routines, waking up in private rooms, cooking simple meals, attending counseling sessions, and meeting with financial advisors who teach budgeting and credit repair. And hope begins to surface not as a dramatic transformation, but as steady, quiet resilience. And the film underscores collaboration as churches coordinate with city agencies, local businesses donate supplies, and volunteers mentor job seekers. Yet it does not shy away from setbacks, documenting a family forced back into temporary shelter after a car repair expense drained their savings, reminding viewers how fragile stability can be. And through interviews with economists and urban planners, we explore long-term strategies such as increasing housing density, reforming zoning laws, incentivizing affordable developments, and expanding supportive housing models that combine rent assistance with social services. And we return repeatedly to the individuals at the heart of the story, allowing them to narrate their own journeys, reflecting on pride, regret, perseverance, and faith. And as seasons change, the camera captures both the harsh glare of summer heat and the surprising chill of desert winter nights, reinforcing the urgency of permanent solutions. And in the final act, the mother who once whispered reassurances signs a lease for a modest apartment after months of effort, her children running across an empty living room that echoes with possibility, while others continue their journeys, some still waiting, some making progress. And the closing montage juxtaposes new housing developments rising against the skyline with outreach workers continuing their rounds, emphasizing that the challenge of homelessness in El Paso is neither simple nor unsolvable, but requires sustained commitment, balanced policy, economic opportunity, and empathy. And the final voiceover reminds viewers that behind every housing statistic is a human story still unfolding, calling on communities to recognize that stability is not merely about property values, but about ensuring that every neighbor has a place to rest, rebuild, and belong.